The 8 red flags of restaurant scheduling. We're super excited to have you join us today, and I wanted to just take a moment to quickly remind you that the session is being recorded and we will be sending the recording link out tomorrow. So if you'd like to share what you learned today with your colleagues, feel free to do so. And also, throughout the session, please feel free to go ahead and type any questions in the Q&A section. We will be holding some time at the end for Q&A, and we'll be teeing up those questions, so please feel free to type them as you think of them. Right now, I'd like to turn it over to Elizabeth Stacks, our Senior Product Marketing Manager. Elizabeth?
Great. Thank you, Cindy. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to have you here with us today for our Ops Innovators webinar. But before we dive into the topic, if you're not familiar with Crunch Time, I'd love to give you a little background on our platform. So Crunch Time has been in operations management for over 30 years working with restaurants, and we offer 4 different platforms, and they all work together to help restaurants achieve growth and operational excellence. So we have on the left side here, you can see our inventory management platform and our labor and scheduling platform, which help you control your food and labor costs and manage profitability. And then on the right side, we have our operations execution platform, also known as Input, and our learning and development platform. And these are more for your front of house teams, helping them create great guest experiences and managing your front of house. So these platforms work together to help restaurants really achieve operational excellence. And for today's webinar, we'll be focused on labor and scheduling, which is a really hot topic right now. Here at Crunch Time, we talk to restaurants teams every day about their labor challenges that they're navigating. And some issues are really easy to spot, while others are a little more challenging. They're a little harder to diagnose and harder to address. And so that's why today we're here. We've highlighted 8 red flags of restaurant scheduling that can often go undetected. And we're joined by 2 outstanding industry experts today, our Crunch Time customers, and they'll be sharing their perspectives on these red flags and labor challenges, and they'll offer some practical solutions and some insights that you might be able to apply in your own restaurant operations. And like Cindy said, we'll have Q&A at the end of the session. And so with that being said, I'll go ahead and introduce our panelists. You can see them here. We have Danielle Neal first. She is the Assistant Director of Business Systems for DMCP Group LLC, which is a franchise of Dunkin', and they have 34 locations. They were also the 2024 Operator of the Year. So that's an important award they won from Dunkin'. And Danielle has 7 years of experience with them. She worked her way up from assistant manager, and she really enjoys kind of diving into the numbers behind operations and utilizing business systems to help streamline processes at Dunkin' and create smarter approaches. Outside of work, you might find Danielle chasing her 2 boys, ages 6 and 12, and she's located in the New England area. And I'll also add that DMCP Group uses Crunch Time labor and scheduling, and they are currently rolling out inventory. So thank you so much, Danielle, for being here with us today. We are excited to have you. And next, I'll introduce Travis Scarborough. Travis he works at LM Restaurants, and he is responsible for Crunch Time implementation and ongoing support, including the POS system and their online ordering management. Travis has been at LM Restaurants for an impressive 24 years. Previously, he was in operations as a general manager, and now he's a senior operations specialist at the home office. Travis is always looking for ways to leverage data and technology to help them improve their operations and really find better focus to deliver exceptional food and unforgettable experiences. LM Restaurants is a restaurant group with 23 units of Carolina Ale House and 9 other brands, and they're also growing. They have been a longtime Crunch Time customer since 2016, and they currently use multiple platforms like basically all the ones you just saw on the slide before: inventory management, labor and scheduling, Input, L&D, and we also don't have it listed here, but BizIQ, which is our analytics platform. So very impressive. Thank you both for joining us today. We're really excited to have you here. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, let's start diving into our topic, labor and scheduling. So it's no secret that managing labor and scheduling, it's not easy today. It's no walk in the park. Labor costs are at an all-time high. Employee turnover has been historically difficult to manage. Compliance is becoming more complicated, and we see that poor scheduling is going unchecked at a lot of restaurants nationwide. And what that looks like is maybe managers are overburdened or they're undertrained as they're struggling to staff shifts, avoid things like over or understaffing, which impact your costs. And this isn't always easy to see and to fix. And above store teams, they might lack visibility to address these issues. Maybe they don't have the right information, they don't have time or resources, and it's a really complicated issue. And the end result of that is that they're overpaying on labor, which drains your profits at the end of the day. And this is kind of a cycle that can continue to happen for restaurants. And if any of these points resonate with you today, know it's possible to really break this cycle if you know what to look for, and the right tools and data can really make all the difference, and make sure you're looking out for the right red flags, as we're going to call them. So with that, let's go ahead and look at our first red flag. Our first red flag is that we often see that operators prioritize speed over quality when they're building schedules. So, speed and efficiency, no doubt it's important, but if you're purely focused on speed and creating a schedule fast, you have no measure of quality, you're probably missing a huge opportunity to optimize your labor and your team's productivity. So, first question, I'll give it to you, Danielle, from your experience. What is kind of the impact of a bad schedule? How does that impact an operation?
Sure. So the whole business really starts with having the right people at the right place at the right time, right? So when you write a bad schedule, um, it impacts your sales, it impacts your staff morale. Um, Sales are down, service times are probably high. You're overstaffed, so you're wasting costs to the restaurant, or you're understaffed and the guests aren't getting the experience that they deserve. So definitely writing a bad schedule has a huge negative effect and impact on the business.
And how do you kind of typically evaluate the quality of schedules that you're being built, particularly when it comes to shifts being over or understaffed?
Yes, so we really like to look at the labor schedule metrics to really dive in with crunch time, and it will break it right down, back of house, front of house, by position, what you're spending on labor percent. It will show your sales, ideal versus actual hours, to really give you a solid understanding of the productivity that you're seeing in the restaurant.
Right. Yeah. Labor productivity is so important. Travis, did you want to add something too?
Yeah, totally agree there, Danielle. Having, one thing that I see common is, managers, especially junior managers, simply copy the schedule from the previous week. They put in their request offs and then they fill the holes. So they're building to pars. So every Friday night they have 15 servers, whether it's rain or snow. Every Monday there's 6 servers, no matter what outside impacts to the sales. So we use the sales forecasting module, of course, in crunch time, and then we've been building out staffing level templates, which that will, based on the sales forecast, it will provide our managers how many hours by position they should be scheduling. And it's fast for the managers to quickly go through the schedule and make those adjustments.
Great. And Danielle, you mentioned ideal hours. So for someone who's not familiar with crunch time and the platform, what can you explain a little bit about what ideal hours are?
Yeah, so the ideal hours, what it gives you is basically the number of people that you should have on for the given sales amount that's forecasted, by the hour, by the half hour, by 15 minutes. With crunch time, you can break it down to basically whatever time frame out of those that you really want to. And that's giving you comfort in knowing that you are staffed properly for the volume of sales that you're projected to make.
Great, thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. So I think it's pretty clear having a bad schedule is going to impact your operation in more ways than one, and you need to be kind of aware of how well you're scheduling, and you can't let that you can't ignore that because we a lot of bad consequences. So our fix here that we're going to share is just don't ignore your post shift data and make sure you're comparing actual to your scheduled labor cost percentage. And if you're forecasting too low, you might be creating a poor guest experience. You're forecasting too high, you might be paying unnecessary labor costs. And speaking of forecasting, that brings us into our next red flag that we want to hit. So your forecast is off. This is a huge issue that we see constantly. Restaurant operators coming to us and they're forecasting manually, they're using guesswork, and an accurate forecast can really be the difference between meeting your labor cost goals and cutting into profits. And if you're solely relying on the manager's intuition, and sometimes there's a seasoned GM who might be able to do a great job, but a lot of times it's not that easy. It's not that straightforward to get the right forecast. So from your experience, what is the impact of a bad forecast? Travis, do you want to share?
Absolutely. So, hands down, our best operators are great forecasters. So forecasting, not only does it impact the whole scheduling piece, but it also impacts, okay, what are our kitchen managers and bar managers ordering? What are we prepping to? So that forecasting piece is extremely important. We all go through the seasonal trends, and crunch time, the tool that's provided can help identify those and be more accurate with the forecasts.
And Danielle, how do you currently approach forecasting in crunch time? What does that look like for you and your operators?
Sure. So typically with sales forecasting, we really take a look at, what does AI project for us to make? What did we make same day last year? What is our year over year trend? All of that information can be found right into in crunch time under this managing sales forecast. And when it's used and when you really take the time to look at, every line and make your best guess based off in that information, I've found that we come within a couple $100, but it's pretty spot on.
Wow, yeah, that's really incredible and important. Travis, did you want to add something?
Yeah, we use auto forecasting, especially for our core Carolina Ale House brand, and we have that set to year over year trend. Our top GMs will go in and adjust those if they know they have an event coming up or a big here in North Carolina Hurricanes game. They'll make those tweaks to the schedule just so that it, like I said, it flows down not only to the scheduling piece but also the suggested ordering, suggested prep levels.
And do you have any kind of advice for operators who are looking to improve their forecasting or their demand planning?
Yeah, we use not only do we do post analysis, on how well we did. We have this, programmed on the dashboard, but we also leverage the BizIQ tool to send out, weekly reports, showing our operators, okay, how did you do against your forecast? And then we also look forward to the following week too, to kind of show them, okay, well, how are you forecasting compared to the past week? How are you forecasting compared to last year's sales, to try to catch any trends that may be going on in that individual restaurant?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I encourage everybody to look at all of the lines as a whole to kind of get a real feel. The information is readily accessible in crunch time for whatever you want to look at, whatever metric for year over year, for the 4-week trend, for the same day last year, and then also that AI projection that it has for you for the week. So it really does add incredible insight to really feel confident in what you're forecasting starting out.
Yeah,
And
and
would
I'd
you say
also like to add that it's a great tool for brand new managers or managers that you just hired into the system, or managers that maybe you've done a little shuffle and relocated into a different market. This gives a tremendous leg up. There's always that learning curve when you get into a brand new box. Where you kind of got to get the feel for your employees, get the feel for the customers, and get the feel for what the sales look like. And this really speeds that whole process up and starts new managers off a step ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. That managing that learning curve is tough when it comes to labor. It really helps. You kind of answered this a little bit, but would you say that forecasting is an area that's worth investing? If you're an operator and you haven't invested in forecasting yet, is that something you would recommend getting nods?
Absolutely.
Hands down.
Yeah, definitely prioritizing forecasts. Forecasting is key. We're going to add this fix here. Leverage forecasting technology if you're doing it manually. There's more options out there. Look for tools that include features like auto forecasting, which they just mentioned, where it's forecasting for you. You don't have to manually do it. AI forecasting. Lots of AI technology out there. Find the tools that work for you. And then idle hours is something we mentioned in the last slide. Idle hours is using your forecast to tell you the exact amount of people to schedule, the exact number of hours to schedule for a shift. And at crunch time, we have a little stat here. This is featuring Jersey Mike's, who is one of our customers, and they've reported forecasting up to 99% accuracy. Danielle, you mentioned forecasting within $100 of sales. So it is possible to improve your forecasting if with the right tools in place. All right. We'll move on to our next red flag that we often see is that operators might be chasing the wrong labor metrics. So oftentimes operators come to us, they want to improve their labor, and we find that they're only focusing on one metric, like labor cost percentage. And while that is an important metric, it doesn't always tell the full story. For example, a low labor cost percentage might seem favorable, but it could also be the result of understaffing, which we know can hurt the guest experience. So, question for you, Danielle, what kind of reports or KPIs does your team currently leverage to make sure you have the right metrics, reports flowing into your dashboards?
Yes, so we heavily rely on the daily payroll control report at all levels. We encourage our managers to even get comfortable with looking at it. The daily payroll control, what that really shows you is this is what you forecasted for the day. This is what your actuals were for the day, with both labor and with the sales. So you can see the variance. So if your labor's low, were your sales way up? If your labor is high, were you not meeting the sales and adjustments weren't made throughout the day to accommodate and execute that? The daily payroll control report is definitely a snapshot of the business, the metrics that you need, your labor, your sales, and then what that variance is to see the whole picture of how the business went.
And how frequently do you look at that report usually?
Daily, at the start of the day and at night. We tend to look at that. How did we start? How did we finish? It also exposes, if there were clock-in errors, somebody forgot to clock out. We were scheduled for X amount of dollars for labor, and we ended way over that. So, using the daily payroll control report really, really exposes if there's any gaps in the operational standpoint.
Great, thank you. Travis, can you also answer that question? What kind of reports are you prioritizing at your team?
Yeah, totally agree with Danielle. The daily payroll control report is a great snapshot to quickly see how your locations are doing, or how a location, or if you're a district manager, how multiple locations are doing. But we definitely focus on everybody looks at the labor percent. But we focus on the splash or sales per labor hour productivity for sure. And there's the labor productivity report. This report has a lot of data in it. So if you identify a day that you're trying to see exactly what the problem was, you can view this report, at the employee level. You can look at it at the position level, or, at the department level. So it's going to show your scheduled versus actual hours, similar to the payroll control report, just at a much more granular level. So yeah, and
Great, thanks. Yeah, you guys highlighted two of the really popular reports. I think the labor productivity report is the most popular report in labor and scheduling that gets pulled, and for good reason. It can break down, like you said, by position, day, sales, give you more about labor. And it's interesting that you both chose those two reports to highlight because, Danielle, you're a QSR, and so it makes sense, the daily payroll control report, and then Travis, having more of a full dining experience, you'll probably need to break into those, deeper dive into those numbers more regularly. So I think let's go ahead and look at a quick fix here. When we talk about using the right data, there's not one single metric, I think, that will solve all of your problems. And there's not one single report that can solve all your problems when we're talking about using data, but instead pay attention to things like variances, looking at what was scheduled versus what was what was actually worked. And I think CrunchTime provides a metric called earned hours, which can tell you how many hours should have been worked based on the actual sales of the restaurant, which can be really insightful. And we'll stay on this topic of data. The next big flag that we see commonly is that operators are flying blind when it comes to labor improvements, or maybe they're not able to use data and reports to drive their growth strategy. We often hear operators are really excited about growth. They want to open new restaurants, but they don't actually know their true labor costs and don't know where they stand. So Travis, I'll give this question for you. If a GM is just starting to lean into data, which reports would you say are most critical to look at if they want to figure out if they're mismanaging labor?
Yeah, and I remember back pre-crunch time, the reports that our GMs and above store leaders used, some came from the point of sale system, some were a result of Excel spreadsheets, many Excel spreadsheets, where people had to manually key data. Crunch Time provides a ton of data, and it can be overwhelming. So we try to guide our GMs and managers into what we want them to see, what we want them to focus on. And we leverage that using the dashboard. There's tons of different metrics that you can populate to the dashboard. We try to keep it 15 different metrics, so that they're not spending all morning during coffee time trying to understand what's being presented. So that's how we do it. If everybody from the assistant manager to the GM to the area director to the VP of ops, they're all looking at the same data. They're looking at the same dashboard. Sure, do we supplement the data with reports out of BizIQ? Absolutely. But that dashboard is the best starting point to make sure the entire team is on the same page and moving towards the common goal.
That's great. Danielle, do you have anything else to add about which reports you would say operators should prioritize if they're maybe new to data, or just any advice for how to create a more data-centric organization?
Yeah, so definitely going over that daily payroll control report with them definitely will show them the impact of how important it is to schedule the right people at the right time. If your sales are down and your labor is at a very low percentage, obviously, probably there were some service barriers and gaps there that hindered the service experience for our guests, right? Long wait times, especially in quick service restaurants. People are going to drive by to the next Dunkin'. There's a Dunkin' every block. So speed of service is super important, and really honing in on, your sales forecasting and your labor scheduling is crucial to being successful in our line of work. The other thing is the Teamworks app that Crunch Time has to offer. That really, especially with a new manager, gives them the hourly insight. We choose to look at it from an hourly standpoint. Um, and it will show you by the hour, based on your forecasted sales, are you up or are you down? Is an adjustment needed? Is your labor high, or are you running too low? Do you need to maybe call someone to come in early? So
Great, thanks. And then also, Danielle, when it comes to using data and labor data, do you find that it's helpful to have data around labor rules, labor law compliance, dealing with things like minors? I know that's come up before.
absolutely. One of my favorite things is the minor labor laws. Obviously, it's crucial with minor laws that you are compliant, or it can be costly to a business, right? With fines and everything, and with Crunch Time, using the Teamwork app with them, when you're scheduling and everything, if you schedule a minor too long, as long as you have the labor laws in place, the schedule won't even allow it. So it will say this person, it will flag it. It won't allow you to schedule it. You can't even save it to the schedule. So that is something that we have become heavily reliant on, printing the minor law report. We're able to, even if they're clocked in 5 minutes too long, we're able to quickly see that and correct it.
Yeah, so important. Travis, do you have anything to add, or another question? What would you say to an operator who's maybe unsure or hesitant about using data to drive daily decisions?
It makes your life so much easier to make those guesses. They're much more educated guesses. You can more quickly identify trends in sales, identify areas of opportunity and be able to make correlations. Maybe you notice that your labor productivity is creeping up. So you're staffed a little lean, and maybe your guest scores are going down. So maybe that's an opportunity to put, more servers on the floor to make sure that it's going to lower your productivity, but maybe that brings your guest scores back in line. I think of the nose of the plane. Are you going up? Are you staying flat? Or are you starting to, come back down to the ground? And having the data at your fingertips, especially when you start looking at groups of restaurants from an above store level. Now you can start to compare, you can aggregate the data and then compare stores of similar sales. If you've got two stores doing the same amount of sales, but one's scheduling 100 more hours in the front of the house, that should, draw some questions. And we're having those conversations with our teams. We more recently, within the past couple of months, have been pushing real hard to roll out these templates, and it's really opened up the eyes to some of our operators, especially whenever we put them side by side and rank them next to their sister stores that have similar sales, and it's changing how we do scheduling.
Yeah, that's great. And I'll go ahead and show our fix here. If you're flying blind when it comes to labor improvements, if you're flying blind, you don't have the data you need. There's a lot of different types of data that you should be prioritizing. When you guys mentioned most of these here, we have labor cost data, employee performance, productivity, compliance, labor law violations, scheduling trends, time punches. There is a lot of data to consider, and then you add on maybe like a platform like BizIQ, an advanced analytics platform, you have even more options. So it can feel a little overwhelming to start with, but once you get a hang of kind of prioritizing data at every level, it gets a little bit easier. And that brings us to our next red flag here, which we see quite frequently, which is slow data holding operators back. If you're waiting maybe days, hours to see your sales stats, it might be impossible for your managers to make real-time decisions and staffing decisions on the store floor. So Danielle, I'll give this question to you. How has timely data, especially sales data, kind of helped you manage your labor more effectively in the moment?
Yes, so the Impact app definitely seeing that real time data filter through at your fingertips. The GMs when they're out on the floor, they don't have to go to the back of house onto their computer to see data. They literally can just press the button on their phone, take a quick glance, and understand, whoa, we aren't as busy as we thought we were, or we're way up in sales. Maybe I need to make some adjustments, or we're down in sales. Maybe, I should start thinking about breaks at this point. So I think that, when we first began implementing crunch time and embracing it, it definitely felt like we were a little underwater at first because the tools that crunch time um, gives you, it's just so much exposure and visibility that you literally can see rate, like I said, down to 15 minutes if you wanted to, how stores are performing, and really jump on it and implement change. So.
And Travis, maybe to follow up on that, where would you suggest that an operator kind of starts if they've had no exposure to data before and now they are able to see something like real time sales data? How have you kind of trained your managers to help them use this information?
Yeah, we haven't really launched Impact just yet. That was a discussion as once we get labor rolled out. We didn't want to have a metric in there that was completely useless. So that's something that we're going to look towards. For us, though, the big thing is keeping managers out on the floor. They don't need to be in the office to having to pull reports. With like the Teamworks mobile app, for instance, they have their pocket roster to where they have, who's going to be working for the day. They have instant access to phone numbers so they can reach them. And again, the goal is to keep them out on the floor. They need to be interacting with guests. They need to be working with their employees. They've got enough to do. So again, getting that time back and letting them do what they do best. And taking care of our customers and our employees.
Yeah, that's great. So maybe it's in addition to slow data holding you back, data that's trapped in the back office and your back desktop, kind of surfacing that data for the managers where they are on the store floor sounds really important. And how frequently, Danielle, did you say how frequently are you pulling data from your POS system? Is that something that you prioritize for timely sales data?
Yeah, so we heavily rely on the Impact app to pull the data, and typically, if I've noticed sales are down, or a store maybe requires a little bit more attention, whether it be a new manager or some things occurring that I want to keep an eye on hourly, I will hit that button. It takes all of 10 seconds to be able to see it. It gives you the percentage, shows, productivity. You can zero in on the metrics that you find are most beneficial. So whether it be the variance, you really want to look at that. You can make that on there. So we definitely heavily rely on it throughout the day. It will show us at the end of this day part, your forecasted sales should be here. Currently, you're at here on the day. So you can definitely effectively run your business from anywhere.
Okay, great. Yeah, that kind of you kind of explained the next slide, our slide here, the fix. Look for a mobile app, and whether you're using the Impact app or like Travis mentioned, Daily Roster, something that is pulling the data into your mobile device when you're on the store floor, so you have that easily accessible is so important right now. So your managers aren't having to go back to the back office or not having to wait until the next day, so that they can see how their sales are doing and make decisions on the fly while they're on the store floor. And that brings us to our next red flag, data errors costing you time and money. So we often see issues with integrations or data integrity can really create a lot of chaos in operation, especially if your scheduling solutions linked to your HR, your payroll system, it's linked to your POS or accounting platform. And if the data flow is interrupted in any of those areas, there can be some really like serious consequences. So Travis, a question for you. Before crunch time, did you ever see something that seemed like maybe a small data error and maybe it snowballed into a bigger kind of problem?
Oh, absolutely. And this goes back to my time in operations. We had what's referred to as an alt ID. Basically, it was our HRIS system at the time. That was the employee identification, the unique identifier for that employee. So managers were required to onboard the employee and the HRIS system, and then they had to manually input the employee into the point of sale system. And this alt ID, that's what was transmitted back for payroll. And inevitably, that alt ID would get fat fingered because this was, general managers, assistant managers, shift leads, kitchen managers that were all entering this, that all had their hands in the data. And it ended up resulting in people getting paid incorrectly. The point of sale system, while it was smart enough to not allow the same alt ID at one particular location, it wasn't cross-checking across multiple locations. So if a North Carolina location entered an alt ID for a Florida location, well, that person in Florida could most likely got paid for the hours that were worked. With crunch time, we've now been able to build out this integration to where the employee information is flowing from our HRIS system into crunch time. And crunch time, managers I can limit what fields are editable. So this field, they can no longer edit this alt ID field. And now the data will then flow from crunch time into our point of sale system, both the employee info as well as scheduling data. And then, the time cards flow back to crunch time, and then the payroll flows back from crunch time into Paycom, our HRIS system, full circle. So this has been, I haven't seen any issue. Haven't heard from the payroll coordinator in over a year now since we've been able to build out this integration. So that was a huge win for us, saving people a lot of time and making sure that we're paying our employees accurately.
Yeah, that's really important. And then to kind of follow up on that, you kind of explained this already, but anything else to add around what can happen when data issues go unaddressed? What is kind of the risk financially, operationally?
Well, yeah, like I said, these are your people. You don't mess with people's money. That could lead to turnover. It could lead to lawsuits. And also in those scenarios, when you pay the wrong person, odds are that person's not going to raise their hand and tell you that you paid me too much. So who knows how long it goes unnoticed. Now, the person that didn't get paid, you're going to know right away, and you're going to need to move the funds to take care of them. But are you able to recoup those funds that were paid to the wrong guest? Not to mention the amount of time from someone at a home office level to dig in and research what went wrong. Where's the money? What happened to it? Can we recoup it? So it's just, consumes a lot of time for all parties involved.
Yeah, absolutely. We hear that all the time when someone comes to us and they're having issues with their integrations. And we really prioritize integrations here at Crunch Time with these platforms, including your employee data, schedule data, payroll data, time punch data, making sure that's moving seamlessly and correctly, the right systems, the right times. And then maybe one more question here for you, Travis. What advice would you give a restaurant operation that might be worried about upfront costs of integrating their systems? Is there some long-term potential for savings or efficiency that you would recommend?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely well worth it. Crunch Time, I think back to whenever I was still in operations and Crunch Time was first presented to me when I applied for this position. And I was so excited about the time saving and, the insights that it will provide. And, how can we minimize data entry? How can we minimize, the mistakes? How can we minimize doing redundant work? I mean, why should you have to onboard somebody in one platform and then enter them in another platform and then maybe enter them in another platform? I mean, it's just a waste of time. So, building out these integrations, and I mean, does it take very long to add an employee into a point of sale system? No. But as you scale it, and then the headaches for fat fingered mistakes and trying to go back and correct it eliminates those. So I highly encourage it. Even this is specific as a scheduling piece, but even on the inventory side with Crunch Time, the more electronic invoices we have, the automation for it is what gives back those precious moments to managers when they're working a busy shift and they have a lot of going on that they're trying to juggle.
Wow, absolutely. So don't overlook the efficiency, the time savings that that integrations can provide. So we'll move on to our next red flag, number 7, which is your support calls are going unanswered. So I'll just say this should not be the norm. If you have unresolved issues over an extended period of time with your scheduling labor platform or with any technology vendor you're using, that's not only frustrating, but it can really damage your operation. So I'll start with you, Danielle. How is working with a vendor that prioritizes support kind of impact your business as a whole?
Yeah, so obviously, when you want answers, you want them fast, right? Everything's so fast paced. We find that we don't really have a lot of time to spend for support calls, and it's super frustrating when you can't get the answers that you need. I love Crunch Time. I love the support that Crunch Time gives in terms of I can see show me how on the system, whatever page you're in, it brings you right to this is where you are, these are the topics, this is what it means, this is what you can do. Crunch Time really has a great interactive system to not have to make a phone call and to easily get the support you need in the moment.
Yeah, so kind of self-service within the app is really important. That's great. Travis, do you have anything to add or your experience with Crunch Time support?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all have those vendors that are less than ideal to deal with. And you have to battle through going through level 1, level 2, level 3 support to hopefully get to the person that might fix your problem. As Danielle said, the self-help, the guide that's in Crunch Time, whatever screen you're on, when you open up that help, it's going to pull up a boatload of information for that screen. That's how I learned a ton about the product. But hands down, Crunch Time in general is the best support vendor that I deal with. I can think, all the tickets that I send are through their ticketing system. And there's been only one time in the 9 years that we've been on the platform that I actually had to pick up the phone and call. So I think that speaks to the success of them being able to transition through any errors that come up. They're going to happen, but they're always quick to respond and get those issues and get you back on track.
Wow, thanks. I love both of those kind of perspectives on support. And this, doesn't apply just to your labor and scheduling platform. It's any technology vendor you're using, like you said. So make sure our fix here is to make sure that when you're selecting a scheduling platform or any other vendor, look into how long does it take them to answer support tickets? How do they prioritize support tickets? Do they have a dedicated staff, or do you have a dedicated success manager? And how do they plan to help you get max value from the platform, or even ask, what are the customers saying? I promise you we didn't tell Travis or Danielle to say either of these things, but it's really important to hear, like, what are customers saying? And another last point here, do customers have influence on the product roadmap, which is another interesting one that sometimes people overlook when they're looking for a new vendor. All right, so we're going to finish up with our last final red flag, number 8 here. Something we see commonly is new shift leaders struggling with the labor learning curve. Okay, so this one is a big one. And we've kind of already touched on it a few times when you're trying to train a new manager. But Danielle, what would you say to someone who is just starting out and they're not sure where to start, and they have a new manager, or someone who was promoted without maybe all the experience that you might have hoped they would have?
Yeah, hands down, the Teamworks app. It gives you that real-time data. It breaks it down, gives you daily insights. It gives you a daily roster. I think Travis had touched upon, if you're utilizing it properly and have all the information in there, employee phone numbers are in there so that you can reach out to them. If somebody's running late and they aren't there, no more of those outdated phone lists that, half of the people don't even work there anymore. You don't even know what door it's hung on. Everything's right there. You can see, okay, these are the people that are supposed to be here. This is the time that they're supposed to be in. This is the time that they're leaving. This is how I should manage my breaks for the day. It really is. I can't even explain how beneficial it's been to really get on that Teamwork app and roll it out to all of our employees.
Yep, you hit the fix once again, focusing on using the mobile apps and getting information like alerts. The daily roster is so important. And also highlighting here, focusing on replacing guesswork with automation. Travis, how does automation kind of help you in the same sense with helping your managers when you have a system in place that's automated?
It gives them some more confidence, when they're making these decisions instead of just guessing. Like Danielle mentioned, that Teamworks app. I mean, it's great. Our managers love that, to have that data right there at their fingertips. With the auto forecasting piece, that can help guide a manager who's unsure, so that they can still operate the business. For new managers coming in, when they're building the schedules, it's going to show the ideal hours by position, by day. And then, a brand new manager could go in there and it'll click on the graph and it'll give you a nice visualization of, sales by hour, what your ideal hours are by position, and then what you actually have scheduled. So then they can, make those adjustments. And again, instead of building schedules to pars, they're now building schedules to actually sales numbers there. So I think that's super important, to increase our managers' capabilities.
Real quick, I just want to add another big one that I don't think that we have really even mentioned with any of it is overtime. By using this Teamworks app and the reports, it actually will flag it and say, "Hey, this person is going to end up in overtime," and it will actually make them bold on their hours to say, "Just that you know, this person will be in overtime on Saturday because you had them come in on Wednesday," and you'll know it ahead of time.
Yeah, it'll tell you the time that they're going to go into OT within
Mhm.
that. It's great for managing that OT piece.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you say that kind of gives you like peace of mind knowing that your team has that automation in place?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's one of the things we hear really frequently from restaurant operators once they do get this kind of automation, especially around overtime, making sure that it's not something you have to remember. You have to rely on yourself to remember. You're getting help with these alerts. And that wraps up our last question, our last final red flag here. Unless either of you have something else you'd like to add, we can move on. All right. Hi, Cindy, you're back.
Oh, hi. Well, thank you so much for such great insights. This is a terrific conversation. We do have some questions coming in, and as a reminder, if you have a question, go ahead and type it into the Q&A section, and we'll get to it. So the first question we have, I think, is open to both Travis and Danielle. What is the ideal productivity goal you look for in your restaurants?
So for us, like I said, we just started building out these staffing level templates. So we of course, we based it on a percentage, but where we landed at for our Carolina Ale House group is overall our splash sales per labor hour all in is about $65 in sales per labor hour. Now, for our signature locations, they have much higher check average, more than most of them double the check average. Whereas so they will have a higher productivity there, but that's where we have landed for now.
Yeah, I find that it definitely varies on the volume of business that you're bringing in. But I have found $65 is probably the lowest, with productivity that you want to go to really be getting ideal productivity out of your employees.
So here's another question coming in. For example, when we make a great schedule for a week to minimize the labor costs, but two scheduled employees call in sick one day before their schedule, what do we do in that case? Any
Yes.
ideas?
So when we
Go ahead, Danielle, sorry.
Yeah, no, sorry. I was just going to make sure that I got the whole question there. So one of the great things with Crunch Time and the Teamworks app, and first of all, obviously you can make adjustments by reaching out to employees to try to see if you can cover the shift. It will show you what the pay rate is of the employee that called out. So if that's a factor, if you have varying um, pay rates to your employees, the system will show you so that you can kind of cover it with an employee at this pay rate versus a higher pay rate. But you can also communicate through the Teamworks app and say, "Hey, I have a pickup shift," and see if any of your employees actually will pick it up. And the system will allow you to say, "I need a shift manager to cover," or "I need a front of house person, back of house person," whatever you need. You can tailor it to kind of compensate for that.
Yeah, and I'll also say with the Teamworks app, you can also view which employees have offered up shifts for swaps for a shift. Because sometimes we'll see, where an employee has requested off or requested a swap that you weren't able to honor. And then we know that sometimes what happens, they end up not showing up. But you can actually see that when you're reviewing a roster, you can toggle the view to see which shifts are offered up, just so you can kind of be prepared for what's coming your way.
And you can change permissions for that. So if that's something that's terrifying, to you, that, oh my gosh, employees can just swap shifts, you definitely can. The great thing about crunch time is if you want to have that option, it's there. But if you don't want to have that option, they allow you to turn it off too. So
time for one more question. This is a question, complimenting you both on how great your organizations are doing with your labor and scheduling, but wondering what additional challenges you have that you anticipate over the next 18 months or so.
Oh, wow. That's the, we've, pre-pandemic, never would have seen that coming. It's always an evolving market, with the changes externally. I think for us, paying attention to the data, trying to, again, with BizIQ, we're constantly looking at new ways to view the data, make the correlations, identify trends for specific locations or markets, and stay out ahead of it. Crunch Time, as I said earlier, provides a ton of data. So it's being able to, I'm looking forward to the AI forecasting as they build that out. And leveraging these tools so that we can, better serve our guests and more efficiently serve our customers as well.
Yeah, I'd say my biggest challenge that I foresee is, in this day and age, money talks, right? So costs are going up and increasing, and employees want to make more money. So one of the big challenges is it is crucial that you are honing in on your ideal versus your actual and getting the most productivity out of your employees. In a perfect world, ideal productivity, the unicorn of it all would be to run at 100, right, for productivity, because that means you've got a strong, solid team that's running optimally, that's carrying your business through the day. So I think, crunch time for me is super valuable, because I feel that with the increasing rise in pay rates and costs and whatnot, this system is going to allow us to really try to be as cost efficient as we possibly can and as productive as we can be.
Going to call it here. So thank you all for your participation today, and to the audience for joining us. For a deeper dive on this topic, you can scan the QR code on your screen. I also put a link in the chat. And again, the recording will be sent out to everyone who attended and those who were not able to attend but registered tomorrow. So please watch for that and feel free to share it with your organization. Thanks again, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep.